Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 22nd edition of the Disruptive Fridays. My name is Lieke Ploeger, and I'm directing the community program at the Disruption Network Lab. And today we're going to discuss a topic that I'm sure many of us have been kind of forced to deal with since the start of the pandemic, which is how can we best make the switch to online events. So we have with us today three really great speakers that have all worked on different types of online events, and they'll be with us today to share their tips, tricks, and experiences so we can find out what works for online events and probably also we'll discuss what doesn't work. So we have with us today Serah Rono of the Carpentries, Maja Durlik of TechSoup Europe, and Kuliberda of Kuliberda Coaching. And they will be sharing with us different examples from, for example, the CSV Conf, Megaphone, CarpentryCon, and more. And yeah, before we start, a reminder, as always, that you can also join our chat online, and you can ask there any questions to speakers at any time. And yeah, please post them whenever you want, because then we will be collecting them for the Q&A at the end. And you can also share any comments or links or anything else there. And also our speakers today will be adding some links to this chat, which we will share with you. So yeah, then I will be introducing first Serah Rono, who's our first speaker. So we'll first hear from each of the speakers, and then we have some more discussion afterwards. So Serah Rono is a computer scientist and a writer, and she has served as a technologist and developer advocate in the fields of open data, open source, and open science for over 8 years now. She has a broad and valuable experience in listening to and steering communities, developing and implementing strategies for technical projects, and also around community building, outreach, and the sustainability of existing mature communities. And currently, she is working as Director of Community Development and Engagement at the Carpentries. So very happy to have you with us today, and over to you, Serah.
Thank you so much, Lieke, and everyone at Disruption Lab for extending this invitation for me to come and share with you a few of the experiences we've had in the different communities that I have the privilege to work with in moving existing community conferences online in the last year. So hi everyone, my name is Serah Jambirono, and I'm very happy to be speaking with you today. Like Lieke said, I am currently Director of Community at the Carpentries, and also one of the organizers for two conferences I'll be referencing. One is CSV Conference, and the other is CarpentryCon. And links to that will be shared with you shortly. So CSV Conference is a community conference for people who work with data in government, media, academia, and industry. And we bring together these people every year so they can share knowledge, network, and collaborate on different work that they've been doing throughout the year. So the conference itself has been around for 7 years now. And in-person editions in the past were held in Berlin and Portland in the US. But when the pandemic hit last year, we had to decide whether to cancel last year's conference. We'd been planning for an in-person one in Washington, DC. But we had to decide whether to cancel it altogether or move it online. And we made the decision to move it online with just 2 months left to the May 2020 conference. So for context, CSV Conf gets roughly 100 to 150 attendees for in-person conferences. And when we went online, because it was a free conference, we got over 1,000 signups. And some of the sessions got around 800 attendees attending live. So that was really great to see. And then for context, CarpentryCon is a community conference, global community conference, happens once every 2 years. In 2018, it was in Dublin, and last year it was going to be in Madison in the US. And so again, in April, we had to decide whether to cancel or move it online. And we decided to move it online, and different from CSV Conf, which remained as a 2-day conference, CarpentryCon became a 7-week conference, which sounds very daunting, but it was really great for reasons I will explain as I go along. So with that context in mind, I want to share a few tips with you for anyone who's considering moving an existing in-person conference online or just beginning to organize virtual events. One of the things I would encourage you to do is to prioritize accessibility. So I think in December last year, there was an International Day for People with Disabilities. And the theme for last year was that not all disabilities are visible, which is a theme that I find very apt for the discussion we are having today. And particularly online, it's very easy to miss people's accessibility needs because we have biases, because of the extent of our awareness and lack thereof. And so it's really important to prioritize accessibility, think about it from the onset, from the platforms you will choose to the way that you will design for people to collaborate and interact with each other, to your conference website, right? And how people will access information before, during, and after the conference. So one of the ways you can prioritize accessibility is by asking your attendees and speakers what accommodations they require, and do that ahead of time so that you're able to plan and include those accommodations. And where you're not able to, communicate clearly about what you're able to do, what you're limited from doing, and why, so that people know what alternatives to find or whether to sit out from your conference altogether. The other thing about accessibility is that where possible and as much as possible, invest in working with an accessibility expert to make sure you have as many things as you need covered. Put aside funds for captioning if you can, translations and things like that. So there's so much to consider. And a few months ago, a friend and I wrote a blog post with a checklist for all the accessibility considerations you should keep in mind as you organize your events. So there's a link there and you can have a look. The second thing I want to share is that it's important to aim for inclusivity. And there's so much to this. I think one of the biggest questions for us beginning to think about virtual CSV conference was how are we going to bring the collaborative elements of the conference to an online space, and with just about 2 months turnaround time from organizing an in-person conference, right? So how was the popular and what we consider the invaluable hallway track going to be run? So in-person conferences, people bump into each other in the hallway and they have extensive conversations that sometimes become projects or completely new organizations. So that how will that run in an online space, right? How would we replace the walk up to the speaker after their talk for a conversation dynamic? So design intentionally for collaboration and interaction. So also take the time to orient your speakers and attendees. Don't assume anything. Don't assume that everyone has worked with Zoom or whatever platform you will use. If you're able to, write guides to show people how you want them to use the platforms you're providing during the event. If you're able to, invite people to office hours so that they're able to test whether they can share their screen, share their slides, so they know where to go to ask questions, how to use chat. Set up your attendees for access. And then be as flexible as possible in enabling your participants to participate. That's an important element of inclusivity. So have multiple ways for people to do things. They can ask questions in chat, but can they also go elsewhere to ask questions? They can listen in as a speaker is speaking, but if they prefer to read notes, is there live note taking that they can follow along and things like that. The other thing is that it's important to invest in a code of conduct. Codes of conduct are really good ways for people to audit your event ahead of time and check whether this is a place that will be safe for them to be in. And so if you're able to, not if you're able to, it is imperative that you invest in a code of conduct and that you're very clear about the ways that people will raise issues, that they encounter during the event, and to tell people what they can expect from a process that is very daunting and stressful. And also, if you're able to spare a few minutes at the beginning of every session in your event to summarize what the code of conduct says and where people can go to learn more about it, maybe link to it. And then it's also very important to bring fun to your online events. For CSV Conf, we have a mascot. It's a llama, and so we took that concept from in-person conferences to online. So over lunch breaks, we will run a stream, and there's a llama there, and people can take selfies with it, and it's very popular. If you go on Twitter and search the hashtag Comma Llama, COMMALLAMA, Comma Llama, you will see people selfies with the CSV Conf Llama. And you can also come there next week to a conference, CSV Conf next week. It's free for you to register, and you'll experience the llama for yourself. So organize treasure hunts, ways for people to share photos and things like that. Humanize your conference, make it memorable in a way that's meaningful for your community. And for now, in the interest of time, the last thing I'll share is that feedback is a gift. And so design how you will collect it and pass it along to your session leads and your speakers. So in-person conferences, people will walk up to the speaker and they will thank them for a great session. They will ask questions and things like that. But online, the speaker is speaking, chat is really running wild. And they're likely to miss all of these things. So if you're able to collect the thank you notes that have been written and send them to the speaker so that they're able to hold on to those and remind themselves that they did a great job, the questions that they received so that they're able to interact with the people that asked these questions after their session, that will be really cool. So for CSV Conf, how we did this was we had a Q&A Slack channel that was set up. So we'd carry all the questions that have been asked and paste them in the Q&A channel, tagging the person that asked them and the person for whom the question was intended. If the question had been answered, we would also paste the answer in the thread for that conversation so that other people could find it and continue on with conversations. And it turned out to be a great idea. There's lots of good conversation in the Q&A Slack channel. And also be sure to collect general conference feedback. Virtual conferences are new and exciting, but they're also spaces. No one quite knows the perfect thing because communities are different and needs are different. So collect feedback and use it to improve whatever future conferences you will have. Because at the end of the day, it's all about your attendees. So here's a long form article that we wrote as CSV Conf organizers after the conference last year to help people who are thinking about going online. We shared the questions we came into this with, the challenges we had, the considerations we made, and why we went with all the different platforms we chose, how we approached certain topics. So you can also have a look at that, and I hope that will help. And I'll also share the schedule for the 7-week conference. And as a measure of inclusivity, it really helped because it meant that people didn't have to take time out of their daily work. They were able to, over the 7 weeks, attend about 4 sessions a week, and it was manageable for most. So it primed people to come in and collaborate effectively without feeling like they were missing out of a conference that only happens once every 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serah. That was awesome to hear more about. And I would also definitely encourage everyone to check out the blog on organizing CSV Conf because there's so much useful information in there. And I just wanted to ask you a brief question before moving on to our next speaker. So could you say a bit more, like CSV Conf is happening again next week? Is it still possible for people to join? And is it going to be kind of similar to what you did last year, or did you make major changes to this year's online event?
I'm really glad you asked this question, Lieke, because I ran out of time and decided to cut out that bit. Yes, CSV Conf is happening next week, May 4th and May 5th. So if you want to spend Star Wars Day with us, we'd be really happy to have you. The conference is free for all, so you need only register, and that's so we can add you to our Slack and Crowdcast, and so you get the updates about sessions as they happen. The main thing we've changed from last year, and based on feedback, is captioning, because Crowdcast, the platform that we use for videos, unfortunately doesn't have captioning yet. And so we figured out a way to do it this year. And so we'll be doing that as one of the major changes. So we're able to be more inclusive and have our conference be more accessible. Yeah, so we invite you to come. So csvconf.com, and you can follow us on Twitter, Komalama or at CSV Conference. Thanks, Lieke.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be joining next week. Great. Okay, then yeah, let's move on to our next speaker, and of course there will be more time to ask you questions at the final Q&A. So Maja Durlik, our next speaker, is a community manager and researcher with TechSoup Europe, and she designs, organizes, and carries out community building events in Central and Eastern Europe and also Central Asia. So she listens and talks to activists to find out what it is that they miss and need to make it easier for them to do their work and change the world, and then searches for experts and practitioners who can give them knowledge and skills and expertise to make it happen. She's a sociology graduate, and before joining TechSoup Europe, she was working in various research and evaluation projects, but also managing social innovation ventures. So, Maja, looking forward to hear more from you as well. Thanks for joining.
Yes, no, Lieke, thank you so much. And thank you to Disruption Lab for organizing this, because I'm already learning so much just listening to Serah. And I think it's such an important thing that we learn from the community, right? Because we are all in this together, for better or for worse, the online reality. So the more sort of we can exchange and make our events better, the better off we all are, because obviously I'm an organizer, event organizer, but I also participate in a lot of them. So it's in all our interest so that they're more inclusive, as Sarah said, but also just good or bearable, because I'm going to speaking a lot about them being bearable. But yes, like Lieke said, I'm a community manager at TechSoup Europe, which is an NGO that helps other NGOs, other activists better understand and use technology in their daily work. So whether you're working on the environment, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, we are here to sort of guide you through the world of tech, but in a sense of understanding how disinformation works or how to use social media to better get your messages across. So a wide range of topics. But the sort of apple of my eye, something I enjoy doing most, I think, in my work is organizing Megaphone Conference, which I actually do with Anna, who's also on this panel, as our educational coach for our session leaders. And Megaphone is a limited closed event for 100 activists each year from Central and Eastern Europe and Central Asia. It's for people we always get people from about 26, 28 countries. It happens annually in a different city of the region each year. So we had one in Romania, we had one in Budapest. We were planning on having another one, maybe in Poland, maybe in Slovakia, and then March of 2021 happened, and we were faced similarly to everyone with a number of questions, which I'm going to list, and some of them might sound trivial and probably well known to anyone who has had to organize an online event, but just some of the things we were struggling with. Although I have to admit, I have been struggling with them longer, because for a long, long time I was in deep denial, and I still believed that, because megaphones are happening in November each year, so I still believed that by then some form of hybrid or like face-to-face smaller event would be possible. So once I had to face the reality, we were faced with questions like, how do we transfer everything from offline from a 2-day offline event that brings people from all over the continent basically to an online event, knowing that an online event is not just a copy-pasted offline event, right? You just don't do, it's not one-to-one. You have to organize it and plan it from the scratch almost. So then we were faced with a challenge. Megaphone has two goals, that it's very focused on gaining practical skills. So it's all workshop focused, so that people after 2 days get specific knowledge, skills, attitude to just take and use in their daily work. And the other goal is to create a safe space for people to get to know each other, feel comfortable with each other, to share, talk about their experiences, sometimes not easy ones, because it's not always easy to be an activist in certain parts of the world. So these two goals, probably, I would say, most difficult to transfer online. So then the question we had, like, how do we engage people? How do we create an online community with people, some of whom we only will meet online? Because so with some we invite some from the previous editions, but what about the new ones who have never met us, who have never met each other? Like, will they be comfortable enough to share and participate? Obviously, the question was, how do we transfer educational content from offline to online, keeping in mind the practical aspect and the emphasis on practice that we have, and this is what we work with Anna and the session leaders very actively on. Obviously, what tools do we use? Like, what tools allow us to carry out our goals and reach our goals? But also on a personal note, and I know this is interesting only to organizers because it really doesn't matter for the participants, is for me, a huge part of my work that makes it, all the logistics, technical stuff, budget managing, worth it, is then that it all comes to fruition when you see it live, right? When people meet each other, the sessions are happening, people are engaging with each other, then it's like you forget all the difficult stuff. And then here it just doesn't happen. So how do you keep yourself motivated and yourself sort of sane in order to sort of lead others and keep them engaged and motivated to participate in your events? That was a challenge. So now moving on to lessons learned very quickly, and then Anna can sort of pick up on certain ones. For us, the most important thing was defining our format. So in a sense of 2-day event where people are together almost 100% of the time, what does that mean online? If we want to do it practical, what does that mean online? If you want to have people engaged, what does that mean for an online workshop? So we had to think really attentively of, like, what do we want to reach with each format. So once we had that, we were sort of more comfortable going forward and planning the event, keeping always in mind our goals. So the goals were sort of a guiding principle, right? So we wanted it to be practical, and we wanted it to be community building. Like, we wanted to attempt to create an online community and online space during the event. Then when it came to transferring content, what we learned is that because everyone is so tired of online, it's really crucial that you put the work in preparation, in the sense that you only transmit the essentials. So you focus on the things that people really need to know, and don't like bother them with things that are not that necessary, which usually means cutting about 30% of the content from each session, or like from each speaker. So what would you do in the face-to-face situation? Like, cut that and like really think about what's the core of your message. It's always good to break it down into small activities. So even if you have a short workshop, like, think about doing it in chunks. It doesn't mean mean a break after each one, but like in terms of like acquiring knowledge, it makes a difference. This is adjusting your communications is something that we found was very interesting, and this is also rings so many bells with Sarah, with what you said. Some of us at this point are professionals at using Zoom and joining online conferences, which is great. But some of us are not, or some of us have limitations, or some of us have issues with the online. So anything you can do on your side to sort of guide people through it, whether that's by posting tips or like guides, instructions, hints on how they can navigate, what they can expect, and making it as easy for them to join as possible. So like if you're testing things and you're thinking what is the user experience, what is the participant's experience in them joining the conference, just think about taking all the roadblocks out of their way. And obviously send reminders, again a tricky thing, because then you can go overload, which we know something a little bit about, and then you just annoy people. Always thinking about your audience is, I think, something that is doubly important in online. And by that I mean taking care of them, because we are also tired, also stressed. This has been going on for so long. In some places it's like we don't know how long we'll be in this situation for. So I do believe it's an act of kindness from an organizer's point of view to make everything as short as possible, as sort of concise as possible, as well thought through as possible, so that your event is not, strenuous to people. It's not something that they have to do. It's not something that takes away something from them, but only sort of allows them to develop. Online really makes a difference in engagement. So try to create opportunities where people can engage on their own terms. So in our case, for example, it meant setting up the platform on the house-based platform, setting the event on the house-based platform, which allowed for people to join and sort of get to know the tool before the conference started, to see who else is on there. They could engage in chat. So in that way, they could have paced their own experience, right? So it wasn't as guided for us as possible. I'm honestly not a fan of online networking sessions, and I would advise against them in a sense of like engagement, community engagement, because I just find them awkward. Personally, I find them awkward, and it might be just my thing, so I would just drop them. The last things I know I should end. The tool is something I purposefully mention sort of almost last, because it's a consequence of everything I talked before. So if you know what your goals are, if you know what effect you want to create in your community, that guides the decision on what tool you should use. From our perspective, it's the one that's as easy as possible to use, so that it's UX friendly and people have very little competences to use. And that's also good with people with different sort of internet connections. So accessibility issues, that it's mobile friendly, is also very important, especially, for example, in Central Asia where we work. And the last thing I'll say is, obviously, everything you do, everything is better when you do it in a team. I feel it's almost, again, more important with the online reality, because you don't get the feedback from the participants as you would in a face-to-face thing. So your team is sort of your circle. They're your people. They're the people who give you feedback, but they also like keep you up. And this will be a good segue to Anna. Last sentence, I swear. It's about adjusting your expectations. Because as an organizer, because like I said, online reality is very different than the offline one, meaning that even if you put a lot of work into it, you prepare a great online event, it will never be as satisfying as an offline one. It just won't. So it won't bring the same satisfaction to you. It will be different to the participants as well. So you have to mentally prepare for that. That it's almost anticlimactic once it's done, because like you've put all this work and then it's done, and like it's really it's not, you don't see the faces, you don't see the smiles, you don't get to hang out with people, and obviously you get nice comments, but then it feels different. So being mentally prepared for that is something that I feel also from the participants' point of view is also important to do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maja, for the great contribution, and also a good bridge for sure to Anna, which she will talk about. But before we move on to Anna, I just wanted to ask you a very brief question, because I think it would also be interesting to speak a little bit about the webinar series that's currently running from Megaphone. Of course, the event has already passed, but maybe people would like to check out the webinar. So maybe you could say just a brief thing about that before we move on.
Yes, Lieke, thank you so much, because these are, maybe you'll get the general links to TechSoup and Megaphone are here, but you're very right. We are doing, because Megaphone is a closed event, each year we're doing a webinar series that is open to all that want to register. And so it's the same experts, amazing people from Megaphone, just doing smaller chunks in a webinar format. And we've actually had 4 episodes already, but we have the last one next Thursday, because they're always happening on Thursdays. Let me just, I'll super quickly post the link to the page where they're all listed. This one, this year's series is called Activists Winning the Attention Economy Game. So it was all about storytelling, using social media, but also facilitating meetings online, which we had a webinar on yesterday, in fact. So I highly recommend it. They're all on YouTube. They're all on our channel, so you can watch them afterwards.
Super. Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that would be also great to check out as a continuation of our talk today, is to go a bit more in depth. Then going to our final speaker for today, Anna Kuliberda. Very happy to have her with us as well. She's a coach, educator, and facilitator, and she supports activists and nonprofit organizations in management, innovation, and change with the human, not robots perspective. And she's the founder of the Radical Act of Self-Care, which is a community against activist burnout and specializes in program creation for events with meaning. So over to you, Anna, and also thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and actually listening to the discussion so far reminded me something why I went into event organizing and program curations. Actually, offline events changed my life few times. It happened that I participated in something and then the connections were built. I discovered something completely new, and I went into a new direction that enriched my life or changed it completely. I moved to Sarajevo because I met people in Sarajevo for a conference. So that brought me to a kind of a realistic, let's say, conclusion of I'm not sure if an online event can change life to that extent. And if that happens, I wish to know those stories. So for me, it didn't happen so far, but I stayed with events and I work with Maja on the amazing Megaphone, which is both a conference and all asynchronous resources that stay on the website. And I also am very proud to be a permanent collaborator on the Personal Democracy Forum Central and Eastern Europe that decreased into talks, which is a monthly discussion with the community. I also support organizers that are willing to transition from something that was planned and promised to donors or to community or to institutions to be offline, and we are going together through the online experience. And I think that if I would need to summarize what to do with an online event right now in April 2021, because it fluctuates. Like we as humans, we have different perspective on online. When we started organizing the new Megaphone in May 2020, we were different. Right now, we are different. I don't know what will happen in a year. So for now, I would say like decrease the content, plan more, and let people talk. And this is from my last experiences. People are so tired of not meeting other people and not having space for discussions that as a facilitator, so it's a very easy job for an organizer. Just give space, ask good questions, and people will talk. And possibly put them in smaller groups so everybody can talk to each other. And this is my something that I discovered, I think, like from mid-March. And I had the chance to work with amazing facilitators, like 3 of them. And they, like, everybody said, like, we just need to let people talk. So if you, as an organizer, you're standing against a dilemma, what to do, how to make it efficient, just let people talk. And I had this experience with a group of young people, like 14, 18, and they were so happy to have an integration meeting when they were just asked stupid questions and they could talk. I had this with educators from the cultural sector, and we were working for a very long time, and it was very substantial, and they were the most grateful for being able to talk to each other and having a lot of group works that was not really aiming at something super specific. And every time I meet somebody, I want to talk, and I really cherish the moments when I can talk about whatever. Is it the weather, the vaccination moment? So, like, humans, not robots, really. And if organizers are trying to put one-to-one the experience of setting the goals for online meetings from offline perspective, it will lost humanity for sure, and probably the goal will not be delivered as well. So the trick is to decrease the expectations very much and also increase the space for people to talk. And it benefits everybody. It benefits our connections to each other, but also, from what I could see, people that are delivering better when they're able to feel a bit more free and less being put in the box of, hey, now we're talking about this meeting and it's super important, we can't lose time. And then usually the meetings are going a bit over time, and people are frustrated because they're late for another meeting, and there is like this kind of downhill mood of everybody. So this is what I learned. I also learned that we need a lot of breaks. So more breaks than usual, because not only if we use the cameras even more, we can't really stand up. We can't really go out. We can't take our laptops really, like, if there's a lot of Zoom jokes, we can see people's bathrooms and kitchens and so on, but it's not really super comfortable. So sometimes we sit for 3 hours of a lecture. And this is another important thing to remember, to give people space to just like stand up. And if the meeting allows it, to ask people to stand up even. The last thing I want to focus on is working with experts. And this is probably the best part of my work, because I have a chance to work with amazing people who are passionate about what they're doing, and they're willing to share it with community, with the audience, for whatever reason. It can be a huge event, it can be a small meeting. And what I'm trying to do is to shape the content to what will be digestible for a brain on Zoom. A participant's brain on Zoom is a bit different brain than a participant's brain in a classroom or in a big conference or an open space conference. So I am using the framework of brain science, basically. So how our brains are consuming anything and be able to process it in order to justify why do we need to decrease content? Why do we need to focus on minimum viable product? Like, what do people will probably, one thing for people to remember for sure. Everything else probably will be foggy and will be lost. But what is the one message that you want people to remember? And with some experts, we do struggle in finding it, because the more you know, the harder it is to put one thing from all the interesting things you would like to share. So we spend quite a lot of time, and that's why I was saying that planning more than usual is important, because something that would be passed with the energy, with walking around the room, with looking at each other normally offline, would work very well for the offline environment. And here we need to cut it, and we're forced to cut the energy as well. And this forces us to plan really more. And I had a privilege with working with amazing organizers who had huge reports, and working on a presentation that was less than 15 minutes and was fitting the goal of the event, that was actually to make people talk about this report, was one of, I would say, biggest achievement of the first quarter of 2021 for me, because it was very interesting. The report was huge, and thinking about the needs of participants that want to talk about their experiences in regards to the report, that was something I'm really proud, because it was a true collaboration with the organizer as well. And one last thing, what I'm working on with experts who are speaking is expression, because when we're on Zoom, focusing the attention of the person that is speaking is harder than usual. So if I have time, I really kind of push people to use more hands if they're comfortable, of course, with that, to move head, and like to actually make sure that people will be able to follow them, not only to hear the voice. So I'm trying to put them a bit out of the podcast mode and remind them that there are people on the other side. So yes, I think that's enough of tips of what is working so far.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. That was great as a final speaker to hear, also from the perspective of maintaining energy levels and how to deal with that during events. That was really valuable. We have already quite a lot of questions also from the audience that came in, but I just wanted to ask you one thing also, because in your bio I read, of course, that you were also working with this community against activist burnout, and I guess this has probably been also an even bigger topic now during the pandemic. So I was just wondering if you could say a bit of how you've been dealing with that since last year's lockdown started.
Oh, this is a very interesting question, because I must say that I'm really not doing well on social media. I'm trying to be better in making real connections. So less content and more connections, and trying to talk about it basically, and take it. What Maja said is actually so beautiful, that a well-organized event is an act of kindness. And I think this is how I try to think about participants of the event, that I am trying to be kind to myself and to them, respecting also their work and time. So this is a kind of meta version. And on the other hand, inviting them to make intentional connections, despite the fact that we just want to watch Netflix and we're so tired after. So those connections, this is a very counterintuitive, or like maybe not our habit, to make it very intentional. And if every expert is saying, if you don't know what to do and you feel very Zoom tired, connect with people, even on the phone, go for a walk. So it went to be a very simple message, not easy solution.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Yeah, let's start then with some questions of our audience, and then I think we also have some time for you to ask each other questions, because we are running quite okay in our schedule. So the first question was to Serah, somebody who wanted to know how it was possible that you could involve 800 plus attendees in your conversation, and how did you manage to have such high numbers, because it's not easy with online conferences.
I appreciate that follow-up question. It is true that 800 people are a lot of people, and it can easily be the difference between chaos and meaningful interaction, depending on how interaction is designed to happen in an online space. So CSV Conf talks are very short. They are 20 minutes long at a time. And so our community is very active on Slack. So that one of the first things we do when people apply to attend the event is invite them to Slack. And that's one of the directives that we give people, that you'll be able to chat in Crowdcast, the platform that we use for videos. But if you'd like to follow up on conversations and have them persist for a long time to come, then move them over to Slack after the session is done. So the 20-minute sessions are great because it's sort of, focus on the speaker. Everyone else is discussing things in chat. We have organizers moderating the chat so they're able to amplify questions and check that there are no bad actors in the chat. But otherwise, every other interaction is up to the participants and how they want to carry it out. And then we also have what is called birds of a feather sessions, which are these smaller sessions that will then happen in things like Zoom or spatial chat. People self-organize. And so they get to talk about the smaller topics or the follow-up conversations from the 20-minute sort of lightning talks that will have happened throughout the day. So that's how that works.
Thank you for clarifying. Then there was also a question specifically for Maja. So how did you organize or curate the documentation of your events, which I assume people mean Megaphone, because you said you needed to cut down content, but did you provide any resources to follow after these live sessions?
Yes, that's a great question. I was even thinking when I heard documentation, I thought that it's a great idea for what Sarah created and her team created. So like all reflections and lessons learned that we have in our internal documents, but that can be made public so that others can learn from it. But that's sort of like that's for organizers, right? And then the people are more important. So the documentation we take care of it is sort of in a twofold way. So on one hand, we have a specific methodology of working with the experts, which Lieke knows, with Anna, that we work with them beforehand, before the event. We have a series of calls where we prepare them for the online reality, we encourage using more engaging methods in their workshops or in their sessions. And then we also talk about what will be sort of the follow-up of the session. So like, what will people get? Like, what materials do you want to share? What types of resources should be made available? And then we this year with the online the way the platform Housebase that we used worked was that each workshop had its own website. So it's like a mini website on the platform where each of the experts designed their own site and uploaded all the materials there. So videos they used, reports they mentioned, the presentations as well. And that was open for people to download. And it was also open for people to download up to a week, I believe, after the event. And we obviously sent reminders that please, if you're interested in something, then it's there for you to use. And what we did last year, and what we also do in terms of sort of making the resources more available to wider groups is the webinar series. That because we don't record our sessions, we haven't recorded the sessions of the online megaphone, but we do record the webinars, and these are available on our social media channels, on the YouTube, so people can go back to them. And we also send out to all the registered participants contact information to all the experts, slides from the webinars. So we try to make sure that they have it on their email boxes, even if they don't necessarily open it always. And then we also did a podcast series for a bit, which was also sort of a ways of another medium to be used to spread the message and get the experts' knowledge to wider circles of audiences. Because as Anna knows best, and this is what I've learned, obviously some people learn in different ways. So some people prefer to listen, some people prefer to make notes, some people prefer to look, and they're more visual that way. So we try to sort of address all of those.
Thank you. Yeah, and then there's a bit more of a technical question, which I think also people are interested in when they organize events. What kind of backend platforms can you recommend using? So I guess this is also related to many of us still using Zoom, and there's of course also sometimes privacy concerns. And yeah, maybe you can give some tips on other background platforms or say what you've been using for your events. So whoever wants to start, feel free to.
So I think I've mentioned this. So sorry, because we actually used because Megaphone had two parts, so it was a event of like lightning talks, a few hours of lightning talks, and then there was a week of workshops. So we used different softwares for different. So for the live event, sort of a kickoff event, we actually used the software we're using right now. So like the VX platform, VX Mix Call. I mean, we were cooperating with a production company because it was 7 speakers from different countries connecting through from different places, and then videos being. So there was more of a production endeavor than we were sort of up for ourselves. So we just cooperated with a production company, which is a great thing because they're getting so experienced right now because they've done for the last year they've done so many events that they're real professionals at it. So for bigger events, I would honestly recommend that because there's no point in your team learning it if you're not going to be using it for if you're not doing it often or on a regular basis. And then, like I mentioned, we used something called HowSpace, which is a Finnish software, and I honestly went to very many demos of different platforms of softwares, and for our goals this was ideal because it was super easy to set up, very user friendly. It allowed for different forms of engagement with the content, which was really important for content and other participants. It provided great analytics because I also what Serah was saying, feedback is really important, and sometimes getting it straight from the people is not that easy, but with online you can also analyze stats, as boring as that sounds, but like monitor people's engagement that way. So HowSpace was really good for that. But for workshops, we did use Zoom. Always keeping in mind that the decision about the platform is guided by sort of the goals and the principles you have for the event. So having in mind all the security concerns, the workshops were sort of pre-registered, so only people who had passcodes attended them. We made sure that you had to log into HowSpace to then log into Zoom, so we made sure that those restrictions were put in place. But then it was just it's very easy to use, meaning like from the participants' point of view, it's just it's friendly. So this was something that we emphasized, but obviously there are so many, and from my perspective, the decision should be guided by the goals of the event you have, and also by you yourself trying a lot of stuff, like going to demos and just like physically using the softwares, and also going to other events is useful. So because then if for not like good tips or like good experiences, then definitely to know what you do not want to use, meaning because we all at this point know what a good online event is versus a bad online event. So from a bad online event is the knowledge that, okay, I don't want to do it like that, and that also goes for software.
I don't know if Anna or Serah, you want to add anything? Or... Okay, then we still have one more question as well in terms of accessibility. I think, Serah, you already talked a lot about that, which was super interesting. But somebody was asking what kind of things others are doing in regards to accessibility. For example, have we had sign language translation, or is there another thing that we do all the time? Or what do you specifically pay attention to in terms of accessibility?
I can talk about the experience of working with interpreters of the sign language. We had it for Personal Democracy Forum in 2020, which was a conference. It was more us speaking to the audience rather than the audience communicating with us. And it was done through, again, a Mix call, and it was produced as well. So we had 8 channels for speakers and the interpreters. And it was all coordinated by the professional production company. So it was an endeavor. And in Poland right now, the Polish Sign Language, it got an amazing, strong self-advocacy from the community, and it got to be easier to engage translators. So it's kind of in Poland right now, it's a must and kind of a shame if you're making a conference and you don't have a Polish Sign Language interpreter, which is amazing, and this is how it should be. So this is how we end up with an amazing collaboration with Deaf Respect Foundation, who really guided us through the process of organizing accessibility for people with hearing impairment. I recently started, and I don't have an answer, but I believe in good questions. I recently started to think about what about people who can't really see that well, like what kind of accessibility should be enhanced in regards to vision impairment, and and also what if somebody cannot text, like we do rely on chats a lot. And this is another question that I still did not figure out, but I'm planning to have actually a series of conversations with experts about it, and I hope to come back to you with answers.
Great, thank you very much for that, Anna. Yeah, we still have a little bit of time left, so I also really wanted to give you a chance to ask questions to each other if you have any. If you don't, I also have a final question we can go into, but Anna, I think you have one. Go ahead.
I would love to ask Serah a question. What was the most satisfying thing in organizing a huge event? Like such a success. Congratulations.
Thank you, Anna. I think one of the greatest things was realizing that there had been a barrier to participation that we weren't exactly aware of before. Having an in-person conference means people have to get visas, people have to have money to travel, people have to have people to take care of their families while they're away, and that their job has to support them while they do it, right? And so coming from an 100 member or 100 participant conference, in-person conference, to over 1,000 online was just a really good realization for us for how much people are interested in the topical conversations that happen in this, space where people work with data in the open, right? And the kinds of work people are doing. So we got lots more or more diverse speakers coming, people from different domains, working in different fields of science and government, talking about different strategies that they employ, challenges that they face, and how they've overcome them, which is always very useful, especially when you're working with data, right? Because you're able to get ideas from other people's experiences, and you're able to share your own to speak to the challenges that they have. So it's even more room for collaboration. And so I think that our community seems to be growing around that. Has been really delightful to see. And it's always great to come away from a conference with people asking, so can we make this into a monthly thing? Although it's not always possible. The answer isn't always yes. So it's good to know when to say no, but that's very flattering and encouraging to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, then I just wanted to ask you all in rounding off kind of our session for today, like, what if, the big question, if everything was suddenly back to normal, if we can go back to a sort of normal, would you do your events differently in the future? Or would you keep something of the offline, online mixture? How would you imagine future events with no more Corona in our lives?
I can go first. I honestly cannot wait for the first offline event, however small it will be, because I'm quite convinced that we won't go back to the scale of the events we had before, and that may be a good thing. So for the environment, for the resources that people have to spend on them. I do feel that there are elements of online, and as I mentioned, that's mostly accessibility and sort of getting the materials and resources to a wider group of people that should remain a constant element of face-to-face meetings. So even if you're doing a face-to-face event, then think about how this can go out to a wider group of people, or how can you document this so that more people can have access to it later, or process it at their own time and space. I think that's definitely a value. It's also wonderful that we now know for sure that you can get so many diverse speakers. That's one, but also speakers from really everywhere, right? Because they don't even have to be live during your event, right? They can record something for you, like a short lightning talk, and that can also enrich your format, so you can play it wherever you feel like it. So I feel that's also an opportunity to get like superstars that you probably wouldn't have money for to get to your event in Central Eastern Europe, which is wonderful. And I think that will, and also availability of experts and speakers to do that is something that I hope will stay with us. But having said that, I honestly, like, for the type of work we do, that I strongly believe that there are upsides and so many good things about people keeping in touch online because of the geographical differences, accessibility issues, all that. And that's extremely valuable. But to build the sort of relationships, build where there's trust, where there's openness to share and sort of comfortableness with each other, and empathy also that you build while just looking at somebody and listening how they speak about it live, is just something that is that cannot be transferred online and just has to happen face to face. So I'm really looking forward to when that can come back in obviously a safe form, smaller scale, with all the restrictions, but yeah, it's just, I feel it's needed.
I also would like to imagine a world where hybrid events, how we figure out how to run hybrid events and in a way that makes sense to everyone. Sometimes the challenge will be that Anne and Lieke are over there in the in-person conference and I wanted to collaborate with them, and I'm over here in the virtual component of the conference. So how does that work? And something else for us to consider is that although we've moved conferences online, there are places where internet access is really, like internet is not accessible. Like it's not open for everyone. It's very expensive when it is. And so events are the last priority when people come online in some places. And so if we move on to hybrid events in the future, we have to think about how we do that and still continue to be inclusive, so that we are genuinely encouraging everyone to participate and giving them equitable opportunities to do so.
I was thinking, one is hybrid events and maybe virtual reality in maybe in 10 years, who knows, maybe it will be happening sooner than we can imagine and will be cheaper. One thing that I for sure am taking for now is making sure that anything that is expertise based would be recorded and put online. And then to figure out a way how to engage online community, especially being inspired right now by Serah, who expanded the the base of the community are basically 100% all like knowledge, like so many. This is unbelievable what you achieved, basically. So I think that one is having more people having access to well-curated knowledge, and then in the offline, offering the methods to mingle better, to have skills workshops, to try stuff, to prototype. And on the other hand, figuring out a way of involving online community in an asynchronous way as well. So something like to keep the conversation going, which is always a promise in an offline event and almost never happens. So how maybe to take this lesson for the future? I have more questions than answers, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm sure we will have some more time to solve the complete puzzle since we won't be back to fully offline anytime soon. But yeah, thank you so much for joining today. I can say this was really a great online event that definitely gave me new energy and inspiration. I also hope for many of you that work like that. So yeah, also many thanks to the people that joined us online for this edition of the Disruptive Fridays. And yeah, we will be back again with Disruptive Fridays on the 21st of May. So we hope to see you again for that edition. And until then, you can also follow us for Disruption Network Lab via our newsletter. We have our next conference coming in September. So if you want to stay updated, check out our newsletter or our website. And yeah, hope to see you in 3 weeks again for the next Disruptive Fridays. And thanks, everyone.